I know every business is different, and like the margins of what I make off other therapists are honestly not that much, but still, I mean, that idea that like I can be right here with you doing this right now, and there are other people seeing clients, and that is also going to benefit me. That's a nice idea and definitely something worth leveraging.
80% of marketing doesn't work. So being able to look at it and say, okay, the website, for some reason that suddenly stops generating leads, it's time to start asking some questions. Welcome to this edition of the Business Brains and BS podcast. Greg, why don't you tell them what we're talking about today?
This is a favorite activity of Eric's, to bring it on Greg. Like, hey, Greg, what's the topic today? Today, we're talking about leverage because my man Eric Nam, before we started recording, started talking about leverage. And now he's going to spring it on me like this was all my idea. But no, it's a good topic to talk about. So I'm glad you brought it up. So let's talk about leverage. Eric, why don't you explain to the listeners what you mean when you say leverage?
Well, Greg, thanks for that lead in. I'd be happy to. So, leverage really is all about doing the work once and getting paid forever. And at Action Coach, we define it as divide to multiply, right? So, it's all about breaking things down to a smaller component and then putting something in place so that it continues to work without you having to be a part of it. And it's really, we've heard the saying work harder, not smarter. Um, it's that opportunity to get to that smarter. But unfortunately, to build leverage, you have to kind of lean into that harder early in order to build the business so it can ultimately work smarter. So really, when you talk about leverage, there are four areas that kind of stand out in leverage, and that's people, it's systems, it's marketing, and it's money. So I guess we can start off with people, and if you think back, Greg, to what are you up to now? 75, 150 therapists, something like that.
17. Close.
17. Okay. Yeah. I'm just speaking that out into existence, right? But when you think back to when it was just you were the guy who was, you get the work, you do the work, you get the work, you do the work. And then you started bringing on therapists, right? And what did that allow you to do both for your personal life and then also for the business?
Yeah, I still remember this my first thoughts about this, about leverage with people. I'd added one therapist to my team, and I remember it was a Friday. I was doing a presentation. This was in 2020, so it's, COVID full force lockdown. Um, so I was on Zoom doing a presentation, so I'm getting paid to do that, right? I'm doing this presentation, and I'm getting paid, and I'm doing it from home. And then this new therapist that I had just added to the team was at the office, seeing clients. And I remember thinking to myself, this is so cool. I'm getting paid to do this thing right here. And then also getting paid because someone else is in my office doing something else. And that was just like kind of mind blowing to me in that moment. I didn't know enough about finances and business back then, or I would have realized it wasn't as cool as I thought it was and wasn't gonna be for a while, but, but just that idea that, like, okay, I'm making money in 2 places at once now, was cool. So, yeah, I mean, that's yeah, I know every business is different, and, like, the margins of what I make off other therapists are honestly not that much, but still, I mean, that idea that, like, you know, I can be right here with you doing this right now, and there are other people seeing clients, and that is also gonna benefit me. That's a nice idea and definitely something worth leveraging.
Yeah. Well, and it's all about multiplying your output, right? So one of you at 100% can only do 100%, but 10 of you at 100% is now 1,000% if my math checks out. So yeah, so that's really what that's all about. And it's important when you're looking at people, leveraging people, it's important to look at, what are the things that I, as the business owner, am doing that I don't need to be doing, the things that I can pay somebody 15, 20 bucks an hour to do to take those off my plate. And then that frees up your time, right? So now you're able to go out and really focus more on the $400, $500 an hour work that the business owner should be doing. So yeah, people, huge part of leverage. So then we move into systems, and systems is really all about, your processes, your automations, checklists, technology, that type of stuff. Um, and when you can get that stuff in place, right? So we say that systems should run a business and people should run systems. So 80% of the business should be run by systems, and then 20% of the business should kind of fall on people. So as you started to scale your business, I imagine you probably ran into a couple of pitfalls, if you will, with things not quite going your way, and you had to stop and say, "Okay, what's going on here, and how do I change that?" And in that case, you probably put in some systems. So I'm just going to throw this out there, put you on the spot, and say, you have any good stories about how you pulled a system in that made a difference for you and kind of saved the day and made your life easier?
Absolutely, yeah, several. The first thing that came to my mind is probably a combination of people and systems. It was getting someone else to, answer phones and do scheduling, which was it was both because I was the one doing that job, so bringing on someone else is the people aspect, and then our system was pretty terrible because, again, it was just me doing it, so the system was someone calls my cell phone, and we all hope that I get back to them before they have found another therapist, you know? Um, so having a new system of, okay, we have a person who's dedicated to this task, and then getting a different phone number, so that was finding, a system outside of my cell phone, so we had to get, a dedicated phone line, and then, like writing scripts. I mean, albeit short, but, like, how we're gonna answer the phone, having to put together, instructionals, for things we need when we're talking to that person initially, and all these sorts of things. Yeah, and it's funny 'cause I don't think about it in as much detail, but now that I'm talking to you and yeah, there were several steps that had to be put in to make sure all that went smoothly. Um, and then that ties into another big thing that comes to mind, which is, when I started out, I was doing everything on paper, because that's at the time the cheapest way to do things. And so switching from that to an electronic health record, was huge. And the EHR, the system that we use, um, is a good one. It's tailor-made for practices like ours. Um, so it's not just getting a system, but the right one, you know? It does everything we want it to do, the calendar, the all the documentation, the billing, messaging back and forth with clients, everything you would want. So getting the right and then having that made life easier on a number of fronts because, again, before I had, a Google Calendar that I, was managing myself, and then I had another therapist, and then, okay, now we gotta have a calendar for that person too, and so that gets complicated. Um, how do we communicate with clients? Was a little murky and just, finding a good tool to use that would do all that, was a big help, that just kinda does everything we want in one place. And I could go on and on. I mean, getting someone to do the billing, again, people plus systems, 'cause, initially I was also the billing person, and it didn't take me very long to learn that I wasn't great at that, and it is a time-consuming job, and I needed somebody else to do that. Um, so, yeah, lots of systems, and you're right. Sometimes the hesitation to start some of that stuff is because it's gonna be time-consuming on the front end. Um, but when you do if you do it correctly, you use the right system, it's well worth it.
Yeah, well, and I think something interesting that you said there too is, billing is something that you didn't like doing, right? And if we don't like doing it and if we don't feel like we're good at it, we tend to push it off. And billing is one of those things that can only be pushed off for so long before it makes a huge impact. So simplifying it, having the right people in place. And I think you made a good point too that you get the systems and then you have the people to run them, but you've gotta have the documentation to train them. You've gotta have the expectations so that they understand, "Okay, this is what good looks like. This is what I'm holding you accountable to do. Here are the KPIs. So, here's the checklist that says, at the end of the day, these are the things we're going to do to close the office down or open the office up, or these are the processes that we follow to make sure that the billing gets done on time and we get paid on time, so you can
Mhm.
pay your therapist on time. So that's fantastic. I think the next opportunity for leverage is really in marketing. And that's really all about kind of your content, your brand, and those campaigns that work for you. Because if you can build something that works for you in marketing, um, and it keeps working for you and you don't have to recreate it, that's a huge thing, right? And I think that that can kind of spread out in a number of different ways. It can be the social media, it can be the email marketing, but I think to an extent that can also kind of tie back to the people too, as far as the network that we create and the referral partners that we have. And you've done a really good job of that with, leveraging relationships with folks who see similar patients than you do. So you maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, when it comes to marketing and leverage, I'm gonna start with online, and then I'll go into some of the in-person stuff. So, as far as bang for your buck goes, the by far the best deal I've ever gotten on marketing is there's an online directory. Um, it's well known, Psychology Today. They're not gonna write us a check, but I'll plug them anyway. Um, it's both a magazine and an online directory. They publish a magazine every month, but on their website, they have a directory where you can find therapists, and they do a great job with SEO and things like that. So much so that if you right now, any city you live in, we'll say Tulsa since that's where we're at. If you go on Google or wherever and you look up, therapist Tulsa or whatever, usually the first link that's going to pop up is Psychology Today. Um, and so everyone that works under the Evolution Mental Health Services umbrella has a Psychology Today profile. And of course, we also have a company profile. And it's very inexpensive. And so when I look at how much I spend for those profiles versus how many clients we get from it, there's nothing else that beats it. I mean, I get to, talk about leverage. I mean, it takes, a few minutes to set up the profile, a few dollars a month to maintain it, and it just keeps on giving. Um, and then the next one for us online would be SEO. Have an SEO set up so that people can find you on Google. That's just on my end. That's simply just letting the team that runs our SEO know, kind of what we're looking for, so that they can make sure the right keywords are activated. I don't know what you call it, and then it's same thing, write them a check every month to make sure that keeps happening. And, they send a report and we can see how it's going and everything like that. So so that just keeps on going. So the whole, Google game, so to speak. So those are, I think, 2 great examples of leverage, very simple tasks as far as on my end, not all that expensive, and it just keeps going. Um, the in-person stuff is like you said, it's relationships. It's, the, uh, there's a local, medical provider, well, I say provider, is a company that has several clinics in the area, um, that just started simply as like, I needed a doctor, and someone recommended to me, "Hey, check this place out. They do it a little differently." It was a direct primary care model, um, and, I guess I'll shout them out too, Remedy Health. They're not maybe I can get them to write a check. It's talking about relationships. I doubt it, but we'll see. Um, and so anyway,
Maybe they can buy us some peanut M&Ms or
yeah,
something, put them
so
in the green room.
but that's all it was. It was just, somebody recommended to me like, "Hey, go check this out." So I go there just as a
Okay.
patient, and it just so happens that the doctor I got assigned to was the owner of the company, and we just, for a couple years, I saw the guy, and we never talk business really, other than that, like, he knew what I did for a living. And
Right.
then just over time, that developed until one day we were talking business, and even then, it didn't start right away. I was, like, referring and things like that, but eventually that blossomed into, uh, a regular referral source, and, that worked well, and so now we have multiple they have multiple locations, and then, you have to maintain those relationships, right? You have to keep that stuff going, and it's not that's just one example, it's that's a lot of it is trying to build those relationships. That's something I learned before I ever owned a business. Um, if I can tell a story here real quick, I used
Yeah, please do.
yeah, one of the, place I used to work, one of my jobs was to help people get out of jail and into treatment for drug and alcohol issues. People would get arrested because of something related to drugs, and, we would try to get them into a treatment program. So I'd go meet with these people that were incarcerated, and, what I found, I got really good at getting people out of jail and into rehab. I could do it pretty quickly to the point that I would walk into the courtroom and people that weren't on my list of people to see would start like trying to get my attention, and they'd be like, "Hey, so and so told me I need to talk to
Oh,
you,"
wow.
you know? Um, and it was just, but all that was just relationships and just and just calling. I'm just calling these rehabs and stuff and being nice to them, and then when they need something from me, making sure I get it to them quickly, um, to the point where it got to the point where then they would call me and say, "Hey, we're having a bed opening up. Do you have anyone that needs to fill that bed?" Because they want full beds,
Oh,
just like I
wow.
wanna get my people in.
Right.
So it became this very mutually beneficial relationship, um, and that was maybe that's the first time I can recall, like, in my career, I was like, "Okay, so just this is just, like, I'll be good to you, you're gonna be good to me, and this will benefit both of us moving forward." And that's when it comes to leveraging those relationships, that's what it is. Like, just be cool with other people, they'll wanna be cool with you, and, you yeah, things will work out well together, and sometimes, then they're not cool with you, and that's fine. I try my you can't always be successful, but I try not to burn bridges. I try to keep, even if we're not gonna do business together anymore, I try to keep it at least keep it cordial
Mhm.
so that maybe down the road we could
Yeah.
again.
Well, and I love those examples, because they're perfect examples of do the work once, get paid forever, right? But we gotta stay on top of if those are still generating, right? If they're still generating leads, because 80% of marketing doesn't work. So being able to look at it and say, okay, the website that you talked about that you got all of your therapists listed on, for some reason that suddenly stops generating leads, it's time to start asking some questions to see, what happened. Did their servers go down, or whatever it is, or did you guys accidentally get removed? But unfortunately, so many people don't continue to test and measure and follow up on that stuff. And then it's like, well, what happened to all our leads? Oh, well, 4 months ago we got pulled off of that website by mistake, and nobody caught it until now. And now you've got a uphill battle that you've got to fight. So no, I think those are great examples of leverage. Um, the last area.
Well, and that goes back to sorry, I was just gonna say that ties back into systems too, right? Because you gotta track, like, where are your people coming from, and so that you can see, if, like, hey, all of a sudden this referral source that's been pretty reliable
Mhm.
isn't we're not getting people from there anymore. What's going on? You don't know that if you're not tracking it, which is again, that's a system thing.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And then the last area for leverage is money. And when you think about that, that's really, the perfect form of leverage when you think about money is when you're able to use other people's money. When you have investors or somebody like that who's coming and fronting some of the cash, and then there's also financing and things like that. But that's opportunities to use other people's money to grow your business, to do the work once and get paid forever. But really, the biggest thing about leverage is that it's our goal to transition from doing employee work to doing owner work, right? And when I say that, you really got three levels of work in a business. You've got employee work, which is basically do the work once, get paid once, right? So going back to your days when you were doing the counseling thing, you'd see a client, you get paid for it. You'd see a client, you get paid for it. And for those out there who haven't read the E-Myth Revisited, I highly recommend that, because I think this is a good place to start putting your systems in place, because you're doing the work and you know exactly what's happening at that time. So going ahead and documenting it now is going to save you from having to do it later. So you kind of get the opportunity to do the employee work and manager's work. The manager's work is really all about do the work once, get paid long term. So this is where we're talking about hiring people, training people, putting systems in place, planning that type of stuff, with the ultimate goal of getting to doing owner's work. And that's really where it's the do the work once, get paid forever. And as I was walking through that, something popped into my head. And I think this is another great one that you could share with everybody. And that's your continuing education videos that you do and how you've managed to leverage those into a recurring revenue stream.
Yeah, right, I provide continuing education for other mental health professionals, and that was, it started I would like to say that this was, like, a very strategic decision early on. It wasn't. It was I was spoiled where I had worked before, where they paid for my continuing education for me, and when I started my own business and didn't have someone paying for anything for me, it occurred to me, "Oh, no. I have to pay for my own CEUs now." I had done a small amount of presenting for my previous employer, and I thought to myself, "Well, I can do that." So, no, I'm not gonna pay for my own CEUs. I'm gonna get people to pay me for my CEUs, and just, thought to myself, "Okay, what could I talk about?" Um, and at the time, this was closer to the time when medical marijuana had been legalized in Oklahoma. And that's all anyone as I was going out in marketing, trying to get business for myself for this new startup venture, that's everywhere I went, people were asking me my thoughts on marijuana. And so I thought, "Okay, that's what everybody wants to know about. I can talk about marijuana." And, um, and just, it went well. I got, people were interested. Again, like having to figure out the systems and everything. How do you make this work? How do you get the CEUs approved? Where are you gonna do it? All that stuff. Kinda got all that in place. It went well, so I'm like, "Okay, let's try another one. What else do people wanna know about?" Well, ethics. Everybody is you're required. The board requires everyone to get ethics CEUs every year. So, that's in demand. Let's talk about ethics, And it just kinda went from there. Um, and at first, it was just the one time in person, presentation. COVID hit, and we had to switch from doing them in person to doing them on Zoom. And in that process, I realized, "Oh, Zoom has a recording feature. Huh." I know I had myself purchased on-demand CEUs from other places. Could I do that? And so then I started recording the presentations and posting them online, and then, again, systems, like, that was quite an endeavor, trying to figure out how to make that work. But finally got that going well. And I feel obligated. I should give another shout out now. McWilliams Media, that's who runs our website. They were a big help. Because that was something that was, like, new to them too, and so we figured that out together, and now it hums along great. But figuring out how to do that, and, uh and then yeah, so now we're at leverage. I do the presentation once, I post it online, and I can continue to get paid for it without having to do it again. And for that matter, though, that even translates to the in-person stuff because I talk about the same stuff over and over. I put the presentation together once, do it 5 times, you know? Um, that still requires me to show up somewhere and talk, but so it's not quite as nice as the on-demand where I don't have to do anything, um, but yeah, no, that is yeah, for me, that has been a good source of leverage, and then that eventually led to bringing in other people I know who are good presenters and knowledgeable, and then now we're leveraging back to people, right? And, then they're doing the presentations and then, posting their stuff online and, just kinda moving on from there. And that was something. Right, and that was something again, going back to systems and testing and measuring. You'll probably remember when you and I very first started working together and you were having me scrutinize all the different aspects of my business, and that's when I realized, like, "Oh my gosh, I should be doing more of this." Like, this is so like, this has the potential to be a lot more money for a lot less work. Um, and it's doing something I enjoy, I enjoy doing
Yeah.
that.
I
So
don't remember the exact verbiage, but I think you said something like, if I ever stop doing these CU things again, you have permission to punch me in the face."
yeah, probably, yeah, it's probably something like that.
Well, and I think
Yeah.
the other thing that's come from it too, which is another great form of leverage here, is that the people who have come to your CEU events are counselors, and that's opened the door for you to have conversations
Mhm.
with people who are looking for a new home, and you've kinda connected with some folks there who have ultimately ended up coming over and becoming therapists as evolution as a result, haven't you?
Yeah, the first therapist I added to my team was someone I'd worked with before. The second therapist I added to my team, it was that. It was someone who had been to multiple, CEU workshops that I had done and just approached me one day after one of the workshops, was just like, "Hey, I like your stuff. I like what you're talking about. You ever think about adding anybody else to your team?" "Sure." And that was, I think, 2021 maybe, and she's been still with us. So yeah, and so it's led to, and she's not the only person that's come to work for me that started from those presentations. Also referrals back, marketing. The other therapists have referred to us because of those presentations. I said this before on a different podcast episode, but you stand up there and talk to a group of people long enough about some topic, if you don't suck at it, they think you know what you're doing, and so when someone comes through their door and it's not really their expertise, but they they know you talk about it, then they're like, "Here, go see this guy. He can help you out."
Yeah. Well, I love that because 'cause you're basically talking about 3 different ways that these CEU events, have led to leverage for you. So that's awesome. And I think, very often we're, for whatever reason, procrastination, fear, whatever it is, we don't take the steps even though we know we should. And when we do take the steps, when we put these processes in place, then it's like, "Oh, man, I wish I'd done this sooner." Um, but I guarantee you there's somebody out there listening to us right now who's got an idea for something like what you just talked about, who hasn't done anything. And what would you say to somebody who, has that idea, knows it's something that's gonna help them, but they just haven't pulled the trigger on it? How would you encourage them, or what would you say to them to take those first steps?
One thing would be to just kinda normalize the anxiety, like, it's scary for everybody. I mean, it was intimidating to me, the idea to start doing those things. Um, we our very first podcast episode, we talked about imposter syndrome. I mean, it was very much imposter syndrome when I started doing those. Um, so just, I'd let them know that that's what you're feeling is totally normal. Um, but it doesn't have to be a reason for it to stop. And something that you are good at that I would apply to this situation is, you've asked me, and I know you ask your clients this regularly, what's kind of the why behind it. Imagine like this thing you have in your head of like what it could be, you know, analyzing that and focusing on that rather than all the fears, you know. Um, I think that's a big help. Putting, pen to paper, like reasonable expectations, what could actually come out of this. Like I said, initially for me, it wasn't even like to make money exactly, it was to not have to pay money. That was it. It was just like, I don't wanna pay for CEUs. Um, so but yeah, figuring out like, and so when I started doing the math early on, it was low. I was like, okay, this is how much it's going to cost me to rent the room. Um, and that was really my only overhead expense. So like that plus my time, how many people do I need to show up to make this, you know, so thinking of it that way too, what's actually possible. Um, consider that. And it really helps if you have somebody that's encouraging, to kind of push you to do that. If you don't have somebody like that in your life, try to get somebody, whether it's someone, like a coach, like a business coach, whether it's a family member, a friend. Hopefully, everybody's got somebody in their life that will, push them to do those things. And then the last thing that comes to mind is just put it on the calendar, because I had the idea to do this, and what I kept thinking is I got to put my presentation together, and then once I have the presentation put together, then I'll figure out the next steps. And that went for months. I just kept not getting the presentation put together, and finally I decided I'm good at deadlines. If I schedule it, then I'll have to get it done. And so that's what I did. I just finally just picked a date, got it scheduled, and then lo and behold, I got the presentation put together, you know? So just, yeah, put a little pressure on yourself. Put the deadline or whatever that would be for you to make it happen. And it's okay if it's not like a giant success. I mean, I had, when I started doing those, I did a few that went pretty well, and then I hit this skid where I had to cancel 2 back to back because no one signed up. And I say no one, like 3 people or less signed up, and it just was bad math to try to do it anyway. And then that was discouraging, like, I'm calling these people and like, "I'm so sorry, we're gonna have to cancel, I give you your money back," um, and then started questioning, like, maybe I just got lucky, maybe this wasn't such a good idea, but just stayed the course, tried it again, and then, you know, kept going. So, um, yes, I guess that's a lot of things I would say to
Yeah,
somebody, but,
but they're all good things.
all those
So it sounds like, I mean, if I
yeah,
had to
all
wrap
those
that
fears
up,
are normal.
and I think action always helps to allay fears, right? Anytime I'm in a bad place, anytime things aren't going well, and I find myself kind of sitting there going, "Oh, woe is me." It's like, okay, well, you can sit here and you can wallow in self pity, or you can figure out something you can do and get moving. And it's amazing when you get moving. Even if you're heading in the wrong direction, you're still getting stuff done. And if you're heading in the wrong direction, that's okay because now you got momentum and you can turn things to whatever direction you need to. So no, I think that was fantastic advice. So perfect. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode of the Business Brains and BS podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and click that subscribe button if you would. If you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple, go ahead, like, follow, share, all of those great things. Do yourself a favor, do us a favor, do your friends a favor, and make sure you get the word out about the Business Brains and BS podcast because we love this community and we love to see it keep growing. So until next time, we'll see you.